We are recording J.P. Moreland. All right. So you are a man who just has lots of people coming at him all the time, right? You don't live a solitary, lonely life, do you?
Not typically, no.
Because here I am. I'm coming at you, and I've come at you before. I've met you. I've been in audiences and crowds, and in your office, and in a YouTube recording in the past. So this is a first, though, for me. This is a personal. This is momentous for me because about 2-3 years into my Christianity, saved when I was 18. So it was probably 2021, maybe 22, when someone first handed me. Now I'm drawing a blank on the book that changed my life. Scaling the Secular City. Yeah, somebody handed me that book.
That means a lot to me, by the way. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but thank you so much for that.
Well, before I had become a Christian, I fancied myself ahead of my time and ahead of my peers, an intellectual already at the age of 14. Right? My dad was an alcoholic and a rocker and read like Gurdjieff and Carlos Castaneda and turned me on to some of this stuff as a kid. And I would formulate things and say it out loud to my friends, and they'd all kind of sit down and go, "What are you talking about?" So when God got a hold of me, won't go into my testimony, and then I realized, this thing that I am, this creature that I am, was designed to understand things, right? I'm designed to understand things. And now my heart is yanked in this direction. It's like my heart, like Jesus grabbed a hold of my heart. And then the connection between the brain started happening. It's like, oh my goodness. I mean, the mind, sorry, not the brain.
Yes,
the mind-body dichotomy, right? So you Scaling the Secular City, I recommend it to everybody. I'll put a link in the description below. It's a classic. It should never be not read. Everybody should read it. All right. But since that time, I'll let you talk here in a sec. Since that time, I have irreverently referred to you as the fourth person of the Godhead.
Oh, God.
Because of the influence.
It's starting to lightning outside.
Yes. So that's why I'm in a secure location. This happens all the time. No, just the direct influence that Jesus has had in my life through your love and relationship with Jesus. A real intellectual engaged when you talk about the miracles that you experience and the 3 guardian angels. By the way, hello to the at least 3 that JP is aware of, guardian angels that are with him right now. Like there's one on either side and one behind him now.
Yes, there is.
Yet you're called one of the 50 most influential thinkers, like secular or Christian, right? Just influential thinkers on the planet. Yet you also have angels standing around you. What is going on here, JP?
I'm already having too much fun.
Good.
Michael, let me just start before I answer that. I can't tell you what you've just shared with me means, because I remember how desperate I was when someone reached out to me and led me to the Lord and answered some of my questions. And I have seen it as a privilege, but a responsibility both, to try to pass on what I got. And that's really what this thing's about for me. I don't care about reputation. I care about reputation, but I don't care about having a 50 years of fame or whatever.
Yeah.
I care about the kingdom and Jesus and people like you and in the ministry that we're having. That means a lot. So when you tell me something like that, I think, well, maybe I'm not the idiot I think I am. Maybe I actually help somebody here along the way.
So at your age, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Wasn't that yesterday?
It was yesterday. Yeah, I'm 74.
Okay, I'm not that stalker. I'm not a stalker, right? I didn't know your birthday. I love you, and you have influenced me, but I'm not such a fanatic, right? Your birthday, and you were born, and I just happened to start reading Wikipedia. Right. And, I was going to start reading this article, how some people introduce you if you're going into a debate or you're on stage, you've been in this format and they say, those of you out here who have no idea who this guy is, resume, credentials, this guy you should listen to. And that's you. But if you guys wonder who this guy is, go find him yourself. Look him up. He has a Wikipedia page. I do not, right? So that's what it's come down to. Those who have Wikipedia pages are the influencers, and those who don't are just nobodies. No, God. Okay, you've taught me. Go ahead.
Here's what happened. You asked me the question. I came to Christ in the 68. I was a junior in college, and it was the 60s, pretty much in the middle of that. And I'll tell you, things were going on campus. There was chaos and all kinds of movements, but there was a real Jesus movement, and it really was real. And I was privileged to be in the middle of that thing. And so I started becoming sort of radical. And I would grab the mic from Black Panthers and I'd preach the gospel to them while they were trying to gather a crowd. And I'd go up and say, give me the mic, and the guy gave it to me. And so I'm telling them about Jesus with about 200 students. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I had looked into this, and it looked to me like the darn thing was true. And if it was without question the greatest news I had ever heard.
You're the real deal. You're the real deal.
Yeah. And it was I'm 53 years into this thing, and I'm more excited today than I was then. So
74, 75, how old are you?
74.
Just turned. Yeah. Okay.
And so, Michael, I started sharing my faith and getting my rear end kicked. And so I said, I don't want that to happen again. So I started reading and studying. And I got interested in a field that I thought was psychology misspelled, namely philosophy. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of the questions boil down to stuff in that discipline. And so my intellectual life has been due to my own curiosity. And I really do want to know why I believe the things I believe. But it was also because I thought we needed in our movement people that were willing to pay the price to try to work hard to be a credible witness in the high towers of the academic community, because I think that gives people, courage and confidence, just knowing we're out there, even if they don't read our books or whatever. But I also thought that I want to love Jesus with all my heart, and I want to learn to draw close to him. I'm a halfway a jerk and halfway not a jerk, when I first came to the Lord, and I don't want to be that way. I want to make progress in this journey. So I really took seriously the privilege of being invited into a flourishing life as an apprentice of Jesus, and experiencing a tender relationship with him. And the idea that miracles were still happening was something that I had no trouble with, though I'd seen some, but I had not seen as many as I thought. But then, in around 2003, I began to go to a vineyard church that wasn't kooky. It was a good one. And I began to hear and see things that I could not believe. And as a result, I started entering into this, and the rest is sort of history.
What year was that about?
2003. So I've been going to our vineyard church for, 19 years now. Mm-hmm. And it's been a real joy for me. And the book on miracles, A Simple Guide to Experiencing Miracles, is really my attempt to present carefully vetted, about 40 to 50 carefully vetted miracle accounts from people that I interviewed. I interviewed other people that were alleged to be eyewitnesses. I called the publisher. I did everything I could to make sure these things were real and these people weren't making the stuff up. And you
were investigative journalist, basically.
I was
making a claim. Let's follow this.
Absolutely. So that's basically what happened.
And it's out. The book is out.
The book is out.
Came out in November. Was that right?
It came out in November. That's right.
21. So how do I get an autographed copy?
Well, if you mail me one, and give me your address, I'll sign one for you.
All right, I'll have one sent to your place, and then I'll have it an envelope included where you sign it and send it to me.
Yeah, that's fine.
I got to do it because you have. Wait, health, we don't need to spend much time on this, but I want an update, a health update. You have multiple cancers, a cancer,
Yes,
in remission, what?
I had 10 surgeries from the late 2014 up to 2016. I a pacemaker. I have a rare disease nobody's heard of called Lynch-Muir-Torrey syndrome, and it increases your chances for cancer significantly. So I got colon cancer that involved 31 lymph nodes. It was a huge tumor, and I had to have chemo and radiation. And I had prostate cancer, had to have radiation for that, and I had it removed. And then there are these lesions where I have to get them cut out. They're different kinds of cancers than everybody else gets. The reason my eye is bandaged is because I had radiation under here in 2010, and eventually it kind of destroyed my cheekbone. And so the skin is soldered to my bone, and a sack of fluid was building up and it couldn't get out. So I had the fluid moved, but if I take the bandage off, it starts moving out again. And I'm going to try to see a second specialist to get another eye on it. So that's
Right.
where that's at.
I got to transition this into I have some burning questions. So speaking of it's substance dualism, and I think there's a more specific definition that you use, because I know there's variations of all this stuff when you start digging into explaining what's going on in existence. So what is the name of the type of dualism that you adhere to or propose?
I adhere to a traditional hylomorphic dualism, or to put it a little differently,
hylomorphic is the word I've heard you say. Hylomorphic,
and it's a Thomistic like. It's very similar to Aquinas's view, though not quite the same.
So I'll watch this back with the dictionary and figure it out. But keep going.
Well, what it means is that I hold that we have a soul, and that is a spiritual substance that contains consciousness, and it animates the body and makes the body living. And so the nature of the soul is pretty much what we think of as information these days. It contains a blueprint for forming a body. And so once it does, the body is actually dependent on the soul for its existence, because if the soul leaves the body, it's a corpse and not a real body, because to be a body, the soul has to be diffused all throughout it to make it living. And so that's kind of my view. I think the body is more than just matter. I think it's ensouled matter, and that's the view. But I'm fundamentally committed to the fact that we have a substantial soul that can survive the death of the body, and it's not physical. And then I have bells and whistles to it, but I'm not going to get in a dogfight over that.
Well, let me see if I can take this in a bit of a direction. So I am of the opinion, of the conviction, that the scriptures teach a physical immortality, right? So that basically humans are a divine species or an immortal species, right? It's the God species of all species. God makes different kinds, and he made one that he was going to come and be a part of. And now we are all a part of it, right? So we're part of the divine immortal species, but there's this temporary condition that occurred called death. Like something corrupt got in and was spreading to all, or had spread already to all of them. And then there needed to be an injection of some more pure immortal blood, right? Like Jesus came, immortal blood, and like to cleanse out, to purify the species.
Yes, I like that.
So we have a temporary death and then a resurrection at some point, right? And Jesus is the firstborn, right? The first one. So how like Jesus are we, right? We will put on the immortal, right? This thing that we have, we will always have, but it will change, right? And we've got to see that in Jesus, but it's going to happen for all of us at some point. So long story short, or long question, are you and I physically going to be watching the heat death of the universe at some point, right?
You know, yeah. I mean, my view is that when we die, our soul does leave the body and exists in what we call an intermediate state. But that, while we can exist that way, that's not the ideal way to exist. And so there will come a time at the end of the age when we will be re-embodied with a new immortal body that won't die. And there will also be a new heaven and a new earth eventually created. And Michael, when I was going through these surgeries, one of the things that helped me tremendously was I had a slight fear of death. And so my wife and I went over the evidence for the resurrection again in my mind. And I was reminded it's pretty strong. And then I began to do with my wife an extensive study of near-death experiences. And I've read 40 or 50 books on these. And I'm telling you, there is beyond any reasonable doubt most of these are true. Some aren't, but I'm saying 90% are. There are 300 million of these that have happened worldwide by statistics, but we have investigated tens upon tens of thousands of them. And I admit that there's a commonality cross culture, but sometimes people interpret their experience in light of the way they were raised, but other times they don't. A lot of times cultural expectations aren't met in a near-death experience, but it is now for me, and I have a whole chapter on these, and I give evidence for why I take them seriously, and I don't believe they contradict the Bible. So I am now very comforted that when I die, I will leave my body like those people do, but I'll have a life, and it's in a parallel space. If you ask me, it's kind of like going through the wardrobe. I mean, I'm not kidding. Kind of like you go through this tunnel or a barrier of some kind, and boom, you're on the other side, and you didn't have to really travel to get there. It's kind of like you just enter a different sort of reality, and it's amazing. But then we will get a resurrected body again.
I have, so that's confirmed. So that's what I feel the truth is, right? If I'm studying scripture properly, I'm like, okay,
we're on the same page.
Right. So Paul says, and Jesus said, like when this, we don't understand it yet, but we're like him. We are like him, but we're going to be like him, right? We have the human part, right? But the sin part has been taken care of. There's a threshold coming where death is done, right? No more death.
That's right.
Which means physical life, not some floating around forever in the sky without a body, right? So it's something going on physically. These bodies were designed by God for a reason. DNA is the miracle molecule, right? The DNA molecule is this incredible porthole to God, right? It's this sentence that God uttered, right? God uttered. He spoke a poem, like poema, right?
Yeah.
We are what's the verse? We are God's workmanship.
His poema,
his handiwork, right? DNA, it's his craftsmanship, right? So this is important to God, the way I look, the way I feel, the way I sound. So this is permanence. You and I physically are experiencing the permanence we will have for eternity. So when I think about that, I think, I think one of the capacities, and this is just speculation, creative speculation, one of the capacities that we will attain, right? If we are all becoming something. We're like in a cocoon right now, caterpillars in a cocoon. We're about to become something incredible. And so like a caterpillar couldn't fly, the butterfly or the moth can now fly. It's a new capacity when the new thing emerges, or the thing that's always been designed to be, right? The thing you've been designed to be is going to emerge into some immortal thing. And I think one of the capacities of that is like revisiting your timeline, your personal timeline, because that is you. That is like, so in that idea, that means that the thoughts I have memories, that's the past me. And I have thoughts that pop into my head that, why isn't that the future me giving me the ideas, from the Godhead, right? The future me is reliving this moment right now, as you and I are having, like you and I, this is the first time we've experienced it, but in the future, we'll be reflecting back on it and revisiting it in pristine detail every moment. Okay, I'm just thinking this is creative speculation. I'm an artist. I work in Hollywood. And so
Yeah,
I take an idea and I push it, see where it goes.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. And so, what is very interesting about what you just said is that a major percentage of people who are credible attesters to dying and going to the other side and then being sent back because they had work to do describe this life review. And I don't think the life review is either the Bema Seat judgment, which assesses our works, or the Great White Throne judgment, which is the declaration of our final destiny. I think it's not even mentioned in the scriptures. It's a third situation that it just isn't in the Bible. But what it is Jesus gives you a life review. Now, look, there have been tens of thousands of people who've reported this, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you give me a break here.
My mom, I call her Miracle Mom. She died for 90 seconds. She's a medical professional, and she knew what was happening. She knew she was dead.
Yeah.
She knew the flatlining, and then she was in the presence of God.
Well,
she was like,
what do you do with that? I mean,
yeah, she goes, oh, I'm good. I'm ready to go. I'm happy. Okay, that'll be fun.
That's what they all say. They don't want to come back. And once you live around this place for a while, I don't blame them. But in the book, I try to show that in this life review, not only do you do what you just said, that we go through all the details of our lives and we become aware of what we were thinking, but we become aware of what the other people around us.
The details that I can't possibly pay attention to right now, you can
No
watch.
way. You're right.
And that's how we are echoing in our head when you're perceptive of your surroundings. Sometimes you pay attention to what the most important thing going on is, and it leads you forward in your pursuit of truth, right? You're just really hyper aware.
It does. It's going to be incredible.
JP. I wish we had. Well, guess what? We have eternity. We're going to chat forever, right?
We are going to. We do.
So,
no doubt about it.
I have a couple of the directions I want to go. Have you heard of a guy named Michael Heiser?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Am I lagging? Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. Tell me about him.
He's an Old Testament scholar.
Yeah,
and he wrote a book called The Unseen Realm. The Unseen Realm. And basically, he kind of had this epiphany. He was in Bible school, seminary, and it was like a couple of years in, and he read Psalm. I don't remember which Psalm it was, Psalm 82 or Psalm 89 or something. He read it in the original language for the first time. Somebody said, "Hey, read this," and because he understood the original languages, he read it and goes, "Oh my goodness!" Basically, it was like an epiphany on the word Elohim, right? The word Elohim and how it's used. So there's plenty of examples of that. Elohim is this plural and singular, like sheep, fish, right? It's a plural and a singular. And the way it's being used in the context is like it can't possibly be referring to the Trinity. It can't possibly be referring to some great human. This just the way it's talked about. There must be a pantheon, right? So there's one true Elohim with the capital E, and there's a whole bunch of other lowercase Elohim. And he says the way it's used in scripture is simply, it refers to non-corporal entities, those that are either the disembodied, like Moses and Elijah on the Mount of Transfiguration, they would be considered Elohim. Right. Somebody in the fiery furnace, that would be an Elohim. Right. Samuel coming back when Saul went to the witch at Endor, there's an Elohim. And I actually personally am working on a project in Hollywood that a guy did something incredible in history and had visitations, and what he was told came to pass. Yeah. So
I believe in that stuff.
You have them standing around you right now. I
do. I know that.
So Elohim refers to angels, angelic beings, and even demonic beings, like the serpent and Job. The serpent the accuser came to the Lord and accused Job. That's an Elohim. That's a pantheon. There's one true God. Even Jesus with, when Jesus would go outside of the land of Israel, he'd cross over and where another deity had authority, and the demons there go, "You're the son of the Most High." Like we have
Yeah.
our deities, right? We have our deities that we're subject to, because there's a hierarchy of deities, principalities, powers, etc. And they recognize, wait, you're the son of you're the real one. You can do whatever you want. Be merciful to us, right? So it's all through Scripture. So it opens your eyes. So I think about Hebrews 12:1 all the time. We are surrounded. Those three words, present tense. We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. So Moses is right here around us. Abraham, Sarah, Rebecca. They're all right here. Peter, James, John. Like right. They may not be paying attention to what you and I are talking about right now,
Right.
but they are already in a better place and anticipating their bodies coming back. Right?
You nailed it. I absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
You saying yes means I'm not crazy.
Oh no, in fact, that's my view. But I can tell you honestly, from the stories in my book and the things I've learned, there literally are angels and demonic beings all around us. All, and I'll put it to you like this:
Do you think those three are guarding you? Are they guarding? Like,
oh
why
yes,
would they be there? Why would they be there? Right,
well,
to fend off the attack.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I can't figure out unless they just like to watch me, play cards or something.
Have they always been there? From conception, right?
That is something I don't know. I do know.
I would argue yes.
God
knew who you were. God knew you were. You got to be protected. You're going to be an important person. These guys are stationed to you. Who knows how many else are out there
that
people don't see around you that are working on your behalf as well, right? These are the three assigned to you. Then there are others doing other stuff.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I'm with you on this, because I think you've read the story, but in the book, I give evidence that there are three angels around me that would hold up in a court of law. This kind of evidence is so strong, and it's objective evidence, that you can't get 5 different people who don't know each other seeing the same thing with a whole bunch of similar characteristics and they weren't able to collude on it. And what they described isn't what most people would think of. And so it is beyond any reasonable doubt, because I had these experiences, and I'm telling you, these people were dead serious, and they in fact, they were afraid I'd think.
Well, here's the kicker.
Go.
Right. Well, the kicker is you haven't seen these angels.
No, I have not.
Right. You haven't seen them. You've only seen a drawing of them. So now you have an impression of you have an impression from a drawing that one of your students, your former students, saw and drew for you. And so the kicker is you've done the legwork. It's investigative journalism in your own case, and you haven't seen them. It's not like you had this vision and now you want to prove this hallucination I had. It's like, no, these people are reporting this to me. So that gives you a kind of an objectivity in the midst of what's going on.
It actually does. That's exactly right. And it's funny, because I think God knew that it would take that sort of thing for me to be convinced, where somebody else having an experience would be enough. But I mean, I needed something like this.
You needed a bunch of people to say, "Hey, JP, oops."
Yeah, there you go. Hey, dude, I don't know if you know it, but guess what?
All right, so I have a question that, well, a direction that you're the only person I can ask this question without the fear of being called a heretic or whatever, right? All right. It's one of those, I wrote it in my journal. I'm like, how do I articulate this as clearly as possible? I'm just going to read an excerpt from a few minutes ago. If we are like Jesus in a fundamental way, right? Jesus said, you're going to become like me in many senses. You are like me now. I'm in you. You are me, right? We are the body of Christ. There's some kind of spiritual truths, some dynamic. We are merged with him once we accept him. If we are like Jesus, and belief in Jesus is the path to salvation, is belief in us the path to salvation. We come, quote, in Jesus' name,
That's right.
end quote. Even if a person, in the words of the moment, in the heat of the moment, or in their confused understanding of reality, if a person says, in the words of the moment, outwardly says, I don't believe in Jesus, but has a completely erroneous grasp of Jesus, of who he really is, that person could technically already still be saved because he believes in someone or something so much that is in Jesus' name, but it's never been explained to that way. It's that way to them, right? It's the good people, the Christians, or somebody you love. Like my father has not been a Christian, but he loves me and believes in me, and he has this sense of eternity. Right? So what, like scripture has, what about the non-believing spouse saved? Right? Saved, like, and then Jesus says, make disciples of nations. And it's not in the nations, a few disciples. He's like, make disciples of nations. Like Israel became a nation that was God's people. My question is, did the sons of Korah go to hell, or was it just a physical punishment and they're in heaven, right? Because they had corporate salvation. Okay, that's the question.
Yeah, but that's a tough one. I'm going to divide it into two different issues. I don't believe in corporate salvation. So
Okay.
I think the word salvation is sometimes temporal deliverance.
Yep.
And so there may have been a protection of them corporately, but the other use of salvation would be justification, in the sense of being completely made right with God. So salvation has a lot of different meanings. What I do find interesting, though, is the other thing that you pointed out. So, and that is that it isn't just saying a name. Because I mean, if that were it, then we could go into these other cultures and get an airplane and skywrite in their language, call on Jesus and you'll be saved. And if they just repeated that phrase in their language,
Ding! They ticked it off.
yeah,
They did the thing. They did the thing.
You don't have a clue what they're doing.
They just did
So
the thing.
I think that there are people who reject what they think Jesus is, but that is not equivalent to rejecting Jesus because they haven't rejected the real deal. And so it's possible for someone to have come to believe in the real Jesus without knowing that that they would call him that, and yet they don't accept Jesus, but that's a character picture. So that's why I find it very hard to evaluate who's in and who's out because I mean this thing is very complicated. I do know that the only basis of salvation is to the death of Christ, but what people have to do to get to apply that before Christ came, I think they had to trust. I think you have to somehow recognize that you need mercy and kindness and that you just look at yourself and say, I don't think I'm up to this. I need somebody, God, to just be to be merciful to me. And you know what I mean? And
that's it. Well, it's also, so that kind of went in the direction I was thinking about. This is, Jesus said these words, a new command I give to you, love one another. Right? It's like he had to articulate it as a law, but it's not that it wasn't always there, but he's clarifying for all of them. It's like all of this stuff is because I love you, right? I am coming to pay the ultimate price because I'm so stoked to hang out with you forever and ever, right?
Absolutely.
To be together and just have a blast in this universe that I created, right? He says, I created this. I want to share it with you. That's the whole point. And that's the big mystery. It's like, why? Why would God do all this? Well, why am I talking to you right now? I'm enjoying the heck out of the fellowship.
Well, there you go. It's an interesting thing about people. People like to share great times and share their experiences with other people. I mean, just the other day, we have a backyard where I'm able to go out there. We have a nice swimming pool and so on. and I enjoy looking at it. It's so beautiful. But what really tickles me is when we have people over and I can share their excitement when they look at it and enjoy it. So there's something about the way people are made is that they get tremendous joy out of sharing things together, not only hanging out, but I don't know, doing things together and appreciating things together.
Shared
Now,
experience.
yeah. And so, I mean, God was so, in my view, God was so overflowing in loving his life that he just could not keep it to himself. I mean, he had to spill this out and create other beings who could appreciate it. They could reject it if they wanted to, but there was too much overflow in him. He's got too much going on in his life. He's too omni.
What's the shortest verse in the Bible?
Yeah. Jesus wept. Is that the one you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's places where he gets emotional. He looks over Jerusalem. He's like, man, it's going to be really painful for me and a lot of you, because he knows what's coming. He knows, like,
I know it.
Jerusalem is about to be destroyed because what Jerusalem's about to do to him. Right? Jerusalem, like 35 years later, all the people there had to flee for their lives. So he's looking, he's like, because that's when he's talking about the temple and saying, you guys have thought it's all about a building all this time. And granted, our father did tell you to build a temple to hang out in, but hello, you are the temple. I am the temple. We are all a temple of God. Right. And what is it? What is a temple? You just get to hang out. And
you do. I love that.
JP, I wish I could do this like every week, but I know. Let me ask you a few questions. Who have you been talking to? Other podcasts, or like what's been going on? I know you have a full schedule.
Mm-hmm. I've done about 50 podcasts since November, and radio interviews and that sort of thing. And I've had more fun. I just love these things because I meet people like you that are in my opinion, these sorts of things and talk radio, Christian radio, are really the primary way people are being educated today, because they're actually being invited into serious conversations. And unfortunately, they don't get that in a lot of places. So that's why I invest time in doing this, because not only do I love meeting people like you, but I'm hoping some people who are watching and so on might get something they can't get somewhere else. So I've been doing that. I'm writing a book. I've been spending 3 years with another guy doing probably 2,000 hours of research. And it's going to be a high-level academic book only for professors and grad students defending the soul. And it's going to be a major tour de force. And we're going to try to submit it before the month of March is over with. We're wrapping it up. And I've been laboring on that thing for 3 years. And so is my colleague, and redoing it and redrafting. And we think we got it to where it's pretty good. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
You are just always busy. I mean, the world in which academia, like the world that you inhabit. I'm friends with Jeff Zwirink, and I know, like, they got deadlines. You got to write some stuff. You got to put a book out. It's like you've got to get knowledge, because we're going to be gaining in knowledge for eternity, right? Like the knowledge.
Absolutely.
It's like we're designed to grow. And so what I did, I just started one of these podcasts or YouTube channel where I just do the daily Bible. I play 4 chapters of the Bible in audio, and then make it a half an hour. It takes, sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes of just listening to 4 chapters of the Bible a day. And then I take my notes while I'm listening through it. And then I just reflect on things and I got people watching, I got friends watching. And it's like, if we really believe that this book is a miracle, like is like a direct communication, why are we not spending every day and like considering it and diving into it and figuring out what the heck it really means and what it meant to the people? It's like, we're going to be doing this for eternity, right? We're going to be learning what God's been doing in history for eternity. Let's get started now.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, good point. I don't really have much to add to that.
I'm sorry. I go off on these riffs sometimes. But,
I love it, dude. I love it.
I want to I want to tell you something that I'm working on. So this is, again, a personal moment, obviously, for me to be able to hang out with you for this amount of time.
I love to hear
You
it.
know, time is the most valuable thing. It's like, it's not something you can replace. And so thank you. And you influenced me actually not to attend, not to go through the apologetics program. It was like, you didn't say that, but when I came to visit you, like in 90 something, right after the creation hypothesis came out, and
Right.
I just like, I got to go. JP's down here. I'm going to go to school around here. And I met with you, and you spoke into my life, but it put me, I don't know, it showed me I was not supposed to just go into apologetics. There's something else God had for me. And now I'm in the entertainment industry, and I believe this project that I'm working on right now is miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle that I keep experiencing because of this one story that I came across. Okay, so story. Jesus was a storyteller, and today in Hollywood, where is storytelling happening? Right? It's big budget cinema or long form storytelling. Netflix. It's like there's just a demand for content, and so I came across something that has all this feeling that God was preserving it and holding it, waiting for me to walk across this field and stumble across this thing and sell everything I have and buy it.
What
Right.
happened?
I bought the field.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick, see how quickly I can tell this. About 4.5 years ago, I was working in Hollywood, and my show came to an end. That's just how it works. And you got either go find another job or strike out on your own. All right. So either you get paid to make content for somebody else, or
Okay.
find something that that somebody will invest in what you're doing. And right in that interim, I have a mentor who's a known Hollywood commodity he's a Christian guy who became my mentor, and he breathed that confidence into me. I came across the story of the kid who killed Hitler's hero. Right. So I've boiled it down to that phrase, the kid who killed Hitler's hero. And the best way to explain it is, if a Jewish kid escaped the Holocaust and Hitler had lived and escaped, this Jewish kid found him and killed him and went on trial for killing him in a hostile country, and was acquitted by the courtroom in that hostile country. Right. So it's a deep, deep, deep story. This is the story of the birth of international law. Right. So it's should be a household name. It's the origin of the word genocide. Right. And this was last year was the 100-year anniversary of the trial of Solomon Tellerian in Berlin on June 2nd and 3rd, 1921. Adolf Hitler, 20 years later, credited the guy that this kid killed with being his inspiration. Adolf Hitler credited a guy from World War I who committed a genocide in World War I before the word existed. All right, so it's this historically revolutionary story that nobody has told, and it happens to be in the nation where Christianity was born. All right, so Christianity was born where? Right? Where did Paul go? And then the 7 churches of Revelation, right? Because Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, and that was kind of a warning. And the Christianity just sprung to life. And there's a Mount Ararat. It's in modern day Turkey. Well, the country that was there prior to modern day Turkey was called Armenia, or Armenians, and they're called the first Christian nation. Right? Like historians say, this is the first
aware of that.
Corporate conversion to, we're
Right.
going to apply the principles of Jesus in the Bible to how we govern our culture. And they thrived. They became a thriving culture. And then they were a minority and oppressed, and a massacre, a genocide of Christians. So a Christian Holocaust, that's the word they were using at the time. Holocaust was a word that was already in the vernacular. So it was a Christian Holocaust, right? When we hear Holocaust, it's World War II is all we think of, but holocausting things, governments doing horrific things like this is holocausting, right? Making it a verb or whatever. And so it was a Christian Holocaust. And it's like, wait a minute, why don't Christians know this? Why don't Christians know that there was a first Christian nation? Something's going on here. God's been doing something all along. And I came across a story that blows it all open for Christians and the world simultaneously. So I've been working with a Georgetown historian, 2 historians out of Georgetown. I'm associated with a Yale historian, experts in World War I. There's a publication that I own. I own an intellectual property. I own the life story of the kid who killed Hitler's hero. I own the life story.
Unbelievable.
And it's like, I got it. It's been buried under the surface of history for 100 years. And people are going to understand where Hitler came from once this story is told properly.
This has got to be produced.
Well, here's the thing. It goes so deep. It's moving, right? It's when you're in Hollywood and you see a project, it's either going forward or it's going backward. And what backward is called, turnaround. They put it into turnaround, right? And it's like that's never going to get made. Well, this project, since it started, has been moving forward and only gaining momentum. And so it feels like it's just something God's doing, and I get to be a part of it. I just get to make the decisions for it.
Well, those are great experiences, by the way.
Well, let me wrap up this part of the story. The thing that blew my mind is this was a court transcript, like it was a legal document. This kid testified. They asked him, why did you assassinate this guy? And he said, the ghost of my dead mother told me that I couldn't be with her in heaven until I did this.
My gosh.
6 years prior to him doing it. Within weeks of his village, because he wasn't in his village, within weeks of his village being butchered and massacred, 80 women and children of his extended family. Like the men were all working in the other countries. Only one brother was in town, but they rolled in and butchered and stole. They found one of his nieces in a harem, right? They found later, but they just massacred the most innocent in the most brutal ways you can't even imagine. And so her soul, his mother's, like, it was fresh. He was over in the war by that time. He was, on the Russian side fighting against the Ottomans, and his mother appeared to him. And he actually, because he saw the massacres from the front lines and as they advance, etc. So he had a post-traumatic stress disorder is how you would describe it, right? That's the clinical way to talk about it. But you are seeing across the threshold when you when you encounter some of the most horrific things that humans can do to each other. That's Satan, right? You're coming face to face with satanic forces and the forces of God, because God is rolling. He has a plan that's in action, right? It's like the enemies are being beaten back, and they're trying to do as much damage to humanity as they can in their limited time, right? And so this guy had visions that looked like Old Testament, like the mountain. Yeah. There's armies in the mountains rolling down. There, like he saw people, and then found out later that they were dead. Right? He saw them in his nightmares or in his dreams. They were people that are friends of his, and then they found out they were. So he had these regular visions, and it's like the Joseph story. He had a dream of killing the guy who became Hitler's hero. He had a dream of killing the architect of the genocide, and 6 years later, it came to pass in total improbability, right? All miraculous. So that's what I'm going through right now.
That is an absolutely wonderful story. And it's got to get out, because do you have the funding, and do you think you'll be able to pull this off?
It's a long process, and basically I have a guy, right? I have contacts. I've been developing this for a while, and I have a lot of people, contacts to a lot of people with resources. The issue is, I'm going to kind of educate you on something that in my business is in intellectual property. In Hollywood, if you're an unknown commodity, like I don't have a Oscar for directing Braveheart, right, under my belt, right? I can't just do whatever I want. Until you have a resume, the contracts you sign give the power, all control over to the studios or whoever's got the money. Whatever contract you sign, you're signing away your control. Right. If you're an unknown, and just because I work in the industry doesn't mean I'm known. I know my way around, but I don't have some breakout successful project prior to this. So I have an agreement, like a solemn oath with the family of this guy. this is the crazy thing. I came across this story, found that it had never been translated into English, and so I couldn't read it. So nobody in the English language has ever read it. And I'm like, wait, he survived. He was acquitted of murder, and wrote his personal account, and nobody ever thought to translate it into English. So I got it done in the last 4 years, and it is riveting, true. I traveled and went to archives with historians, to Istanbul, to Armenia, to the war office in London, just researching. It is true. It's not a made up story. And sorry, I get revved up, but in intellectual property, if you sign it away, the family is not going to give you the authorized version. They trust me. It's I showed up out of nowhere. Nobody had ever come to them and asked them for this story, this incredible story. Nobody had ever considered the family, right? It's famous in the community, but the family was just never addressed. And I went to them and they said, yes, but you can't sell it to someone else. So that's where, like, the funding has to be somebody who understands that process. I have to maintain all creative control. I can't sign away any creative control as far as funding, right? As far as profits, like, we'll make whatever mechanism for profits after the fact, but I cannot, because the instant somebody else takes control because I signed the wrong paper, it actually evaporates. The thing evaporates. It's like it's no longer sanctioned by the family. It's just somebody stealing their story, and it will be public in the community. So it would never succeed. All right.
I get it. I get it.
So that's just,
you got to do this.
well, it's happening. So it's what it turns out.
I'm encouraged.
It is a grassroots thing that has this momentum growing, and I see it, right? If you have a vision that you believe came from God, especially when you're in my position, it's like, I've just been seeing miracle after miracle after miracle. A person that I didn't know I needed in my life, a kid who's an expert historian who also can translate it on the fly for me, right?
What?
And right, that's what happened. The day I found out I could never read this memoir, a kid walked in the bookstore who was a historian and an expert in this era, and translated it for me. He did 10 hours of translation, just a rough translation, so I could see the story right away up front. Then we found the right translator. Like, another miracle happened is I got connected with the guy that was the perfect guy, to credibly translate it, verbatim. So it's miracle after miracle after miracle. I met my first investor, who is co-owner of the intellectual property company with me, is an Armenian, right? So it's preserved in the culture, and I get to be the non-Armenian, telling it from the non-Armenian point of view. There's these concentric circles. Like, there's the family, the guy, his story is the family. Then there's the ethnic population, the Armenians. It's just a very, very important story. And then there's Christians, because Armenian is a Christian nation and it's our Christian history. But that's the part that Christians don't know anything about. And it's like, there's so much story to tell here in the Christian community about what God has been doing and is currently doing. And it's it's crossover because it's actual history. I've got, atheistic historians out of Georgetown that are like, yep, this is all true.
Absolutely. Well, hey, how can you argue against that? I mean, this is just what makes it so great. That's why you got to keep control of that material, though.
Exactly.
No telling what would happen to it if somebody else started augmenting it a little bit,
Yeah, they turned it into a James Bond movie or something. Yeah,
exactly.
Right? It's like they just put things in there that they think they know how to make it better, and it's just like, the closer I get to the details, the more compelling it is. So sorry to monopolize all this time. I just want to share with you something important happening in my life.
Well, these kinds of conversations are rich, and I love to hear about what's happening in your life and others. And I'm glad that you took time to share this, because now I'm going to tell my wife about this, and not only will we hold you up, but this is God's working in all kinds of ways today. And this is just another example of it. And I like hearing about these things. They're strengthening.
I had a milestone just the other day. My historian, right? Who uses that phrase, my historian? It's like, this kid came into my life. He's like my little brother now. And I just refer to him as my historian. He sent me a text saying, congratulations, our YouTube channel has been cited in its first scholarly journal. like scholarly article, like my YouTube channel. The words that I said are in a footnote on page 26.
Dude,
It's footnote number 154, right? That's like I memorized these. It was a moment that my words went into a scholarly journal.
I
Like,
love it.
talk about credibility, talk about cred, right? Street cred. Like, look at this. My YouTube channel, it's called Tales of Truth. And there's people that I work with that are helping me that have no idea I even have that YouTube channel. But I started that to say, basically, it's the behind the scenes of the project. All the stuff I've been telling you in concentrated form. I've got history professors, former military talking about, war. I've got the great granddaughter of Henry Morgenthau. Like, yeah, I've got just credible people on that YouTube channel. It's like 1 hour interviews and conversations like this. And now it's actually, it's legit, right?
That's so great.
How many times have you been published, right? Once in something that matters now. How about you, JP?
I'm not telling.
You've got hundreds probably.
Oh, I'm not,
right?
let's not go there.
All right. Well, thank you for existing, right? Isn't that a weird thank you?
No, I know.
Thank you for being who you are.
You're so welcome, because thank you. I love one of the most brilliant concepts in the ancient world was written by Paul, and it was the concept of the body. And that is a genius concept, because what it means is we all get to play and we all matter, and we don't have to try to be somebody else to matter.
We can enjoy who we are.
Exactly. What we can do is strengthen who we are, and
that glorifies him. It's glorifying him.
Yeah. And I just think it's absolutely brilliant, because you're playing and I'm playing, and who knows how many other people that are watching and so on are playing in their own ways. And we never will get to see the combined synergy of all this, except for perhaps when we get a chance to review it.
We'll review it. Yeah.
But,
It'll be at some point, like 1.8 million years from now, or 5.6 trillion years from now. We'll come back to it.
We sure will. And it won't make any difference. Well, I like you, buddy.
Well, JP Moreland, there's two important JPs in my life. There was one that preceded you.
Oh, no.
Jimmy Page, the guitarist and engineer for the band called Led Zeppelin.
Oh, I love Led Zeppelin.
That guy got into my soul.
Well, their music does. I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan.
Well, their art, it's art, and it's from God, right? It's like
I love it.
There may be mixed messages sometimes that are like, what are you talking about? But when you're enjoying music or creating music, you are doing what God made you for. So it can't be sin. You, like when you're killing and destroying, that sin. When you're making and enjoying, that's
a nice
what you're made for.
Nice distinction.
Well, so JP Moreland. So when you came along, I'm like, I like this guy already. His initials are JP.
I had a strike ahead from the beginning.
All right. I'm going to get the book. What's the title again?
A Simple Guide to Experience Miracles.
And it's
I think that you will really enjoy it.
Well, I know I will, because my mom, like you, is supposed to be dead, right? You're supposed to be dead. Every moment you have is a gift. Every breath, every word, every extra thought that you get to communicate, gifts from God. My mom had something called a pulmonary emboli, right? Which is she had like 70 blood clots simultaneously. Like basically her heart exploded into her lungs. People don't survive that, but she happened to be 6 miles from one of 9 hospitals that 2 months prior had been approved of an experimental device. And she rolled in and they go, you're going to be a part of our study. This thing could save you. And it did. They basically they told her to notify her next of kin. We're going to do surgery, notify your next of kin. They didn't think she was going to survive. So miracle mom is what I call her.
That is a miracle.
Yeah. It's verifiable, right? It could be the sequel or the part 2 of your book, right?
I'll stick it in the next version. Well, if you email me, I'll send you my address, and you can send me your book.
I will do it. I'll be on it.
Well, thank you so much for this time. I mean, is gone just like that. And I really enjoyed you, Michael.
Well, I don't want to tire you out because I could go and go and go,
You
but
have no-
we have eternity. We have eternity. Hopefully we'll get to do this again. I love you, JP.
You too, my brother.
Be
Let's do
healthy.
it again.
All right. Good.